I can hear you.
You can hear me. All right, there we go. Okay, I'll try that again. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Feedback, Episode 8. We're joined by Ben Vida, who will be talking with us, and Ty Braxton about his piece, Music for Ensemble and Pitch Shifter Delay from 2012, I think. Today we're trying something new. We're going to be broadcasting out to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, so there may be a couple little things that happen. But we're keeping our fingers crossed. As usual, you can always send questions to feedback@yarnwire.org or join the live chat on YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook to ask any questions, and we'll try and get to them during the show. With that, I'll hand it over to Ben. Take it away.
Hi, folks. Yeah, well, I guess let's just jump right into this piece. Ty, maybe we can begin with you talking a little bit about sort of the order of things when you were trying to put this piece together. Maybe a little bit about like how you conceptualized the patch and sort of what the feedback was between what you were developing in the patch and how you were making the decisions on the page.
Yeah. The initial concept behind it, well, first of all, I've been working with Ableton and Max for Live and trying to get into ideas of like kind of extended technique within my own performance as a guitar player, and what it would mean to sequence effects through a certain set amount of time, and just kind of building a piece around the sequencing of effects and changing the timbre or changing the pitch or something of an instrument at key points. So that was on one hand. On the other hand, right around that time, I think it was 2013 actually that we did this piece. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was 2000. I think it was 2013. Yeah. I had just come off of doing a couple shows with Philip Glass, doing a duo with him, and it was a really great experience. And my headspace was like, had been diving into some of his pieces in order for us to play together. So I was kind of like trying just to marry these two things that I had been working on. The idea of just like assimilating some of his language into something that was kind of technical and sequenced, but then being able to apply this effect kind of through kind of globally through the ensemble. That was kind of the idea that I thought would be interesting. So that was the initial concept behind it, and the piece was really just composed with me playing guitar. Like I was able to, I did a version of this whole piece just with guitar by myself, and then just kind of went back and transcribed it, and then maybe like added a couple things, some counterpoint and stuff to it. But it was a pretty simple piece as a whole.
Were you originally getting these sorts of effects like in your guitar, like pedal board system, and then found like a way of articulating it even more kind of in a more advanced way through Ableton?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm someone who, was cutting my teeth using very crude guitar effects pedals and stuff, and looping devices and stuff through the course of my musical journey kind of up to this point. And then when I started working with Ableton, the idea of being able to kind of take these next steps and being able to like sequence these effects and being able to kind of get more detailed and nuanced with its application was really attractive to me, and particularly the idea of sequencing pitch shifters and delays, where you're able to kind of outline harmonically really interesting, kind of complex information that can then be reset and reordered depending on what key or what texture you're looking for, kind of note to note, almost bar to bar, note to note. So it kind of allowed for like a deeper connection of using effects within a piece for myself. Yeah.
It's so interesting that it started on guitar, because the piece has almost this strumming like quality to it. The piano, the way that the piano gets extended through the pitch shifting and the delay.
It's very comfortable to play on guitar too, just the way that I play. So it's like it's something that I was really able to like dig into and enjoy, and in order to get through the piece, because it's delay, where you're having to kind of get a very exacting call and response with what you're playing. You are playing to a click. So I'm playing to like a click in my ear and just like, enjoying just playing, and then watching Ableton kind of, be able to meet the different chord changes with ease and stuff. So you're just enjoying playing. You're not thinking about turning effects on and off and stuff. So it was like more of a fun exercise. And then the idea of kind of applying that to a quartet, especially with Yarn Wire, who I knew would just kill it. I knew it was just going to be fun to like to kind of just explore that way of working, that effect sequencing.
Yeah, maybe you guys could jump in here a little bit and talk a bit of your experience, getting to know the patch, getting to know what it means to kind of play inside it and have it extend your voices.
It's funny because when we practiced it with a click without the patch, we're just like arpeggiating, and we're like, okay, we're staying together, this is cool. And then when you figure out how to make it work, isolate the sounds properly, make sure certain things aren't going through and everything, it's a completely different world, obviously, and it's cool that it's automated, because it's going along with the click, and it can do the different transpositions at different times, because I'm imagining using pedals and like, figuring that out, and that would add a whole layer of just like, getting confused and worried that you're in the right spot. But it kind of like the effects that happen, they don't feel like they're being imposed on you. You feel like you're kind of inhabiting them, and like, I don't know, it's a really cool experience. Having done a lot of things with electronics, it's unlike other things that we've done. It's cool. In a really satisfying way.
Yeah.
Well, the piece is so propulsive, and because like the nature of it is really kind of defined by its pulsation, there's little room for error as far as being able to like fall off that track. So even though it's very simple, there is a rigidness to it that I was really enjoying watching you guys do it when you did it for the first time. Like it's one of those things that just seems simple when it's mastered, but in order to really lock in, because the delay, you're playing eighth notes almost throughout the course of the piece, and it's delaying at 16th notes, and it's transposing what note you're playing. But it's imperfect a little bit. There's it's not like a totally synced delay. It's like maybe slightly rushed or slightly behind. I have to go back and listen.
Yeah, there's a little swing in there, just like the tiniest bit.
And if you had to solely go by listening to the effect, because it has its own like strange character, it would probably be really hard to get a level of exactitude with it. Yeah. So,
especially for a classical musician.
Yeah, well, I mean, for anyone too. I mean, for a group, when you're like having to listen to the person you're playing with as well. But that's kind of part of like, this is why I really love a lot of electronic music and kind of electroacoustic music that has kind of an extended technique component, is that it could be magical in a way. Like I remember when you guys did it at Issue, it started, Laura started with the piano, and the way you were playing, Laura, just visually, it wasn't looking like it was too complicated for you, and no one could see like the click or anything. It's just like 3 eighth notes, da 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 da, but but because the effect was playing, it was ricocheting across the room in 16th notes, and it sounded very virtuosic, but you were very stoic in how you're playing it, and just like that kind of added element to the piece is something that I find really exciting to watch. You know
what I'm remembering?
The group comes in and everyone's kind of flying, but it's still very like everyone is still very exacting in how they're playing.
You mentioned issue, Ty.
Huh?
Like, you mentioned issue, and I'm thinking like listening to the click and the 16th notes at issue Project Room, and it's just like you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's like a big bathtub.
And so like, thank God that click is there, because like you're just okay. This thing is right.
Yeah. Trust it.
Trust the click.
Definitely with the effect you said, I always feel like I'm superhuman when I'm playing that, because, what I play and what I hear is like, wow, there's like two of me doing this. And also absolutely like, even that's just that tiny bit of imperfection, especially I think it was very obvious when we're recording it, just that tiny bit of imperfection really like make a big, huge bump in the unevenness in the sound.
Yes. The quality of the delay itself, if I could just talk about that for a second, it's not just a simple delay, it's called a multi-tap delay, which means that you could kind of choose a finite amount of delays per note or per strike. So, you hit a note and then it'll delay it 32 times and then stop dead, with no trail or anything, no feedback trail. And on top of that, within the effect, it's such that the level of the effect when you strike, it fades up the 32 notes. So it's like da-ra, 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 right? So it's like it has a whip to it. So you kind of have this like whipped delay. That's I think that's what aids in its kind of like unique character quality, as opposed to just like a straight delay.
Nice.
Is that something you have to tweak a preset to get that to happen?
Yeah, it's like there's a couple plugins that could do things like that, but I was using one of the Max for Live audio effects. It's multi-tap delay thing, whatever it is, and also not only does it whip up, it goes from left to right. So every note that you hit starts in the center in the mix, and then delays far left and whips up right. So you kind of get this,
It gives it a lot of life instead of just like, some kind of straight delay, which is cool.
Doesn't feel as cold as like.
Yeah, it feels a little more organic. Yeah.
Here's a question for you on Wire. When a piece doesn't prove to call upon your sort of the more virtuosic aspects of your performance abilities, how does that feel? Like, are you looking for pieces that really challenge you, like on that level or more on a conceptual level? Where's the point of interest for you guys as an ensemble at this point?
Well,
would you even say this isn't?
I would actually. I think it's actually no.
Maybe,
I think I was thinking about that while Ty was talking, because I play for a long time in this piece before the other ensemble members come in, so I'm playing for like I think I have like maybe 4 measures of rest in the whole piece, and it's like it has that same sort of challenging quality that is present in a lot of like minimal pieces or minimalist pieces, which is like if you start to think too hard, then it becomes hard. You have to sort of like let your body take over in a certain way while still concentrating and tracking the music. And there is, I think, and there's definitely like a physical stamina challenge inherent in music like this, which is also really fun because you actually are listening to yourself in a way that maybe you can't in, I don't know, like serialist music or something that's hyper complex, where you're really just constantly thinking about every tiny detail. Here you can really step back from yourself, and it's challenging in a different way, I think.
We have to listen to each other too, Like
I specifically actually remember that Laura really had no time to turn pages, and this is pre-iPad
Pre-iPad.
Sorry, Laura.
It's okay.
Yeah, he had a ream of music, right?
Yeah.
It's just like
Right. I remember actually. Yeah, I remember when you guys were setting up stands at issue. It was kind of a issue as far as having like being able to have the score laid out in a way where you didn't have to do a lot of page turns.
Yeah.
It's pretty relentless. This is the fun thing and the nightmare for imagine for a lot of ensembles, especially for the way that I work and the things that excite me is that I start at the computer kind of for everything that I write, whether it's for orchestra, ensemble, or electronic music. It kind of all starts from this place, and I'm so excited about doing these weird, something that excites me that has to do with, something strange coming out of the computer, and you don't think about the performers. I never think about the performers at first, at least.
Yeah.
When I'm doing it, I'm just like, wow, that sounds cool. Yeah, like the computer makes this sound great. I'm sure that'll we'll just have that translate. And it's great. I mean, first of all, you guys are an incredible ensemble, so you're able to like meet that challenge. But it's kind of funny how casually you can stumble into something that's virtuosic or very challenging in a way that you're not considering even in the beginning because you're just enjoying the technology.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I actually I think Russell wanted to maybe answer part of Ben's question, the first part, which is like, how do we approach, like, maybe what are we looking for in collaborations? I think that's a really interesting question, both with Ty's piece and just kind of in general.
It's a hard question to answer. I mean, is good music like an answer? Not really. But like, we're always looking for things that have like some kind of depth, repeatability, and that's a very subjective thing, obviously. And I think that's okay. And in this case, it's what makes us all individuals. So for us as individuals and as a group, we're looking for things that have some kind of meaning, some resonance with where we are at that moment in time in life, what's missing, what we need, what paths we haven't gone down, and we're hoping to get pieces that fill those. That's a lot to ask. And that's why, we work with people who, we get along with and have relationships with and stuff like that. It's about people and You
have such a wide cross section of pieces that you've done with so many different composers. The amount of variety that you guys have and the mastery that you have over so many different kinds of pieces. It's awesome. It's awesome to have seen, to just see all the recordings and the collections of music you've recorded over the years.
Cool.
Thanks,
Nice.
Ty.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Do you guys find that there's more often than not an element of electronics or some sort of aspect of, even if it just means a click, some sort of technology in the kinds of pieces that are coming in for you these days?
It's hard to have a blanket statement. Wouldn't you say, guys?
I think it's really varied. Yeah. I think
like a third. It's been quite a bit, I would say. Even like pieces that do not involve any electronics that we need to control, such as Anil Lockwood's piece. It still needs, in performance, needs every instrument to be mic'd. I don't know if that even, it doesn't. It's not the same type of electronics that's involved, but I guess involves a sound engineer to facilitate the happening of the concert.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you perform that piece of hers out at ESS earlier this year?
No, just at Miller.
No, at
Miller
Miller
Theater.
Theater.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Ty,
Yes.
what is your relationship to sort of the idea of extended technique in general? Like you're a guitarist. When you started to use pedals, was it an idea that you were going to? Did you ever go through a period of working with extended technique when it wasn't created out of effects or created out of, like, was there ever just sort of a performative extended technique that you were interested in?
It's a really good question. I feel like I was always attracted to the scope of the potential of electronics that was happening, especially with like crude guitar pedals and stuff. I mean, sure, like watching like someone like Thurston Moore or something like, totally like come at the guitar from a bunch of different angles or something, just physically manipulating it. I think I did some of those experiments when I was younger and maybe more in a band situation, but I don't know. I locked in pretty quickly to the idea of electronics and effects, and because it felt like a frontier, at least at that point, where like you didn't know, like it felt like an untapped, fully explored realm that I felt like extended technique, just physically attacking your instrument in different ways. I felt like I understood what that was. Maybe that's not an accurate assessment, but I just felt that way. I felt like I kind of understood what sounds you can get out of the instrument by preparing it in certain ways, like prepared guitar, prepared piano, or manipulating the instrument physically in some way that was outside the scope of how people traditionally use it. And there's something about electronics, and then especially with the computer, that for me, even now, still feels like a not fully explored resource, even though it's something that is permeating music right now. It still feels new to me. I could say that probably 90% of pieces that I write, maybe 100% of pieces I write, have an electronic component to it still, because I like that opposition. I still find a lot of value and excitement in exploring that kind of duality between ensembles and electronics.
When we were working on Hive together, one thing that was interesting was this idea of like impossible tempo changes and things like so these sort of like hidden elements within the technical realm that allowed for these acoustic shifts that would happen that just seemed, like how was the ensemble possibly staying together and making making these changes together.
Exactly. It kind of brings the acoustic realm closer to the way that you work with in electronic music. You know what I mean? It's like a way to kind of like bring that way of working closer to this kind of like impossible, kind of consistently impossible sounding kind of music that you can make from electronic music. That'll always be exciting to me. And like it's kind of funny, like what you guys were talking about, just virtuosity, how virtuosity is can take different forms. When we think of virtuosity, we think of like the nonstop running line 30-second notes, but being able to have a whole ensemble link up, on an eighth note exactly every single time for 8 minutes, that's a virtuosity in and of itself. You know what I mean? And that opens up a whole new kind of area of exploration. Like that kind of exactitude, suddenly you can kind of start to apply different things that, when put through that technique, you can kind of get different results, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You and I would talk sometimes about like the virtuosity within like the performance of like a Morton Feldman piece, where there's this other kind of almost like inverted virtuosity there, and where the tension lies, it has to do with dynamics, and it has to do with the ability to sustain attention. It's interesting. It's for this kind of piece, where do you think the tension exists? Like, where is that point?
I mean, the fact that it's the exactitude, and it's the exactitude of being able to execute it with a whole full ensemble kind of all together, because it's essentially in unison. I think there's some parts where it breaks free, and there's some dialogue with another instrument or something, but it's that, and you're fighting against the delay effect itself. You're fighting against like kind of these, acoustic barriers for you to be able to be exact. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge. I mean, Joran Weiler would have to answer that, but that's what I would say.
No, I think that's
nailed it.
You're right.
Nailed it.
I mean, I think we play in unison a bunch, and I know, like, at least when I come in, I know Laura's not going to miss any notes.
Right.
But I might, and I really don't want to.
Well, it's the percussion, the pitchless percussion is the one element that technically isn't going through the effect. And in a weird way, when you start to rely on the effect for the propulsion, because you kind of just get used to its character as you move through, I wonder if that's easier or harder because you have nothing to kind of buttress yourself up against, maybe besides the click.
It's really hard, right, Ian? I mean, you do the woodblock part, I do the bongo thing, and it's like you really can only, because if we're on the xylophone and Glock, like we're playing with the effect and we feel it, but then when we move to these other things, we're like naked, and we can't refer to that anymore. We're referring to like the entirety of the ensemble, and it's like every time a new rehearsal letter comes up, there's a shift in feel, and it's really scary. All those moments I see it coming. It's like 8 measures. Okay, here we go. Oh man, it's gonna and then you go to the next thing.
Well, I also there's like an intervallic change that happens too, right? In all those rehearsal, it's not even like the patch is not always the same, and so you're like, oops, that came earlier than I expected, or oops, that came later than I expected. So and you don't want to end.
Sometimes the note changes, and technically what you're playing isn't changing, but the interval changes, right? So you're just like psychologically having to, are we in a new place?
Listening and not listening at the same time. It's really hard. But
I mean, I was just thinking.
Go ahead. No, go.
I was thinking about just virtuosity and Ben, what you mentioned about like what's difficult. I think we can usually find something difficult, like you were mentioning with Feldman, like holding tension and dynamics. But another like quote unquote virtuosic thing that's being incorporated more is like consistently being able to get electronics to work properly. So, I mean, being good at that.
That's a whole different set of virtuosity. I know, it's funny. Like, I was worried about this patch as well, because I had never done this before, and I was kind of like, well, you guys are playing like your asses off, and it's like, and you need that click, and the delay needs to sit where it sits, and if something shifted in the wrong way, the piece is over.
That's true.
And presets love to change, don't they? Between when you open them and close them, presets just love to change. You never know. When I sent it to you, I was like, well, we'll see how that translates.
Right. Had you been, you had talked about, you and Philip Glass were playing some shows together right around this time. Before that, like, was that like school of American minimalist music interesting to you? Like, was that something like when you were a college kid and stuff you were into?
Sure, I was, but it wasn't something that I necessarily felt like was mine. I really loved that music. I appreciated the music, but it wasn't necessarily. I couldn't say that was easily where I was coming from necessarily. But playing with him was it kind of gave me license to try that language, because I enjoyed playing with him, and it was a great experience. And my kind of headspace was after learning, we did his piano etudes, and after learning those piano etudes and just kind of like sitting inside of his world, then trying to kind of take that and just apply it was just like a fun kind of exercise,
Were you performing those on guitar?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We never talked about this. That's interesting.
It was guitar and keyboard. So it was like a 61 key keyboard going through effects. I don't think I wasn't using a delay patch like this, but I was using effects and probably some delay of some kind. And guitar, and just like trying to match him and play these pieces.
But that's interesting, and to think about like the use of the delay, and of course it brings to mind Terry Riley's music, and so this is like a very interesting kind of hybridization of a couple of different fields, because I think to my ear it sounds kind of more in the realm of Philip Glass, but the methodology is definitely like extends this history of Terry Riley's.
For
certainly.
sure. For sure. I was so fascinated. I've been so fascinated with effects, kind of through the course of my music career, that I was maybe coming more from it from a being in a rock band and stuff and enjoying like these textures in this like kind of propulsive way, and then kind of this piece was a way of actually slimming down some of those voices and kind of meditating on something simpler, at least when I was composing it on guitar, but then fleshing it back out again for an ensemble.
It's interesting because minimalism is like a place where I feel like it's like this crack where new music ensembles can almost like tip into the world of being almost like a rock and roll band. And when you think of like Philip Glass's early ensembles and how they would rehearse, or like on the other school, like Tony Conrad, Lamont Young, John Cale, like that, there's this amplitude in place that you were hearing in the realm of rock and roll music, but not necessarily in the realm of modern classical or contemporary classical music. And when I was working with you guys with Yarnwire on the piece that we did together, I kept thinking to myself, oh, I just want us to sound like Spaceman 3 or like the Velvet Underground or something, like just chugging along, knowing that like in some ways what we're doing is really simple, and having sheet music almost seemed like out of place or something like that, because it was really about kind of locking into this ensemble vibe. And I would wonder if you guys could speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, that's why I didn't read any music during your piece. I was looking at words, not notes.
Oh, right. There were all those words.
Yeah, just a few words.
Yeah, just a few.
Yeah.
I mean, Ben, I think, I'm really glad you say something like that, that's like kind of a goal, because I think no matter what the music is at this point, like you just want to play together like a band. And whatever the piece happens to be, we're listening to each other, we're going off of body language, we're doing all the same things that you do when you're on stage with a band, except sometimes you have, music up in front of you. And you're right, sometimes it gets in the way. And I think one of our dreams was to play, Berrios Linnea without music, to get rid of that thing. I don't think my brain can hold that stuff in there. So sorry, guys. But like, it's like that. The goal isn't to like prove anything by having music or whatever. The goal is to, just play, I think.
Yeah, that you guys are so recognizable as an ensemble that, you've had these, and I imagine at this point, when you reach out to someone, they're a composer, they're so aware of the work that you guys have already done and the sound of your group, even though there's so many, it's such a multifaceted ensemble, even within this very specific instrumentation.
Yeah.
Everything's a rhythm instrument with you guys. So it's the idea of getting into this thing that can be very like the sort of pleasure of that propulsion or something like that is very attractive.
Yeah, it's certainly like when we did our piece, you guys definitely, I mean, I think like a lot of ensembles right now, and definitely you guys have assimilated a lot of, what it means to be in a band has kind of been assimilated into a lot of working new music kind of ensembles now. It's not so separate, It feels like that sense of urgency and propulsion is there. And I remember like when we did the thing at Issue, I loved how you performed it. It didn't feel like it didn't feel like a classical piece. It didn't feel like a new music piece. It just had its own, you guys have your own kind of hybridization as far as how you interpret a piece like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I think something that we've been trying to get to is like bands have, over time they develop like a sound, a sound of the band, like Guns N' Roses is recognizable as Guns N' Roses. I mean,
for a couple of
obvious
records.
reasons,
Where
but like
coming from, for sure.
I think we've always been like, it'd be cool if across like a broad spectrum of compositional styles, we like still maintain some sort of sound. more difficult to put a finger on, but
I think it's in our recordings. It's using a multipressor and limiter, just to more than a normal classical group would use. I think that's the secret. And close miking.
Yeah, I think another thing that I'm thinking about, it goes along the line of band, is like a sense of style in performance. Just we always cue the same way, sort of different, but also same. And also the way I guess we carry certain like rhythmic passages, or that you can think of, I guess, have this physical language or body language that we pass around each other. I think that we may carry through in a very similar way, even though with different pieces.
Yeah.
That's a good
that may
point.
carry certain kind of similarities.
we try to
Ian
look
and I
similar, serious.
Yeah, and Ian and I don't change clothes, so that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We always wear the same thing. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. That's something that Ty and I always talk about. It's like, how do we convince you guys to just show up in your street clothes? And,
You don't need to convince us. We did that a bunch of times, right?
yeah. Well, Ty, I guess I wanted to ask, like, what is at this point? Because I know you finished a big new piece for orchestra, and you're working on a lot of different electronic music.
Yeah.
For you, what's sort of the space between those two modes of working? Like, I know you and I feel funny asking it because you and I talk about this all the time,
right,
but for the
right.
audience,
that's the eternal question. I feel like they're so relative, like the way that, within the way that I'm working with electronic music and then also with notated music, there is a lot of crossover, and I'm interested in, pulling one technique from one place over to the other to the other place, and trying to hybridize this thing. And it's a relationship that keeps changing as far as using electronics with ensemble. And then how is that related to just purely electronic music? I don't know. It changes. It's a question I literally can't answer right now, as I'm in the middle of working on something, and I'm just like, where does this begin? Like, what is this thing? It's a hard question to answer. There's clearly there's clearly a relationship between these two modes of spaces where I'm working, but it's really hard to define that right now. If that makes sense.
I'm always really. I always find it really intriguing that no matter what mode you're working in or methodologies, it really sounds like you. And like I may have heard this piece ages ago, maybe, but I hadn't heard it in a while, and so I listened to it before we got started to do this little thing today, and I was just kind of laughing to myself because I was like, this is so Thai, and that it and in a way, like, it has the energy of the live group. It has like what's so amazing about what Yarn Wire is able to do, but it also happens to be that. It's very, very interesting. You're so good at sort of folding the acoustic into the electronic and the electronic into the acoustic, and it seems like maybe that's almost just reveals like a way of hearing that exists for you.
Well, thank you. It is funny that's an exploration that I'll always be excited about. And right now, currently, as I've forged out and I'm working on this new electronic piece, one thing that is a challenge that I'm struggling with is finding that opposition that you get with an acoustic element against the electronic. There's something about it that rings true when they're both happening at the same time. It's something that I'll always be drawn to as a listener and as a composer. I think just that relationship.
I could kind of bring that question into the realm of Yarn Wire a bit too. Like, as if you think of arranging as kind of a form of synthesis, as you guys as an ensemble have engaged in more and more works with electronics, do you feel that your ears have recalibrated a little bit, or when it comes back to just using acoustic instruments, or as you're pulling acoustic instruments off the shelf, you know, in the rehearsal space and bringing them together.
It's a thing that comes up a lot. I know in like contemporary music parlance, like compositional techniques that mimic electronic sounds, like certain like ways for wind players to create envelopes that are like clear on off, like no.
Oh wow.
And to conceive of acoustic sounds as electronic sounds. But I don't think that's exactly what you mean.
Well, what you're getting at is more interesting than my question. Because that leads me to think that like composers would be bringing pieces in that they're thinking about maybe through the framework or the history of their own history of listening that is much more sort of engaged with the kind of gestures that can happen within the electronic world that, you know, like all of a sudden it's being brought into the physical world, and how is that, like, where is the evolution of one's performance practice? I mean, this almost brings us back to an idea of virtuosity, I guess.
Yeah.
You know,
but I do think bouncing off of Ty's, like thinking of effects, I think that has very much influenced all of our playing, like mimicking certain effects like filter sweeps, like delays. Like I think after hearing them first electronically, we like bring that to some instrumental techniques now, like adding a delay to like a bass drum hit, like that sort of envelope as it diminuendos, or I don't know.
Yeah, and I think as we get more into improvisation-based collaborations or just improvisation as an ensemble, like it's a timbral thing too for piano, because the piano itself, right, is a simple instrument, has a very direct, recognizable sound. But once you start getting inside the guts and messing around and with playing on the strings and what can I do to manipulate the sound, that's like our sort of best attempt at getting that timbral variety that you can get with electronic music. I think that my ears have definitely been opened up a lot by that.
It's really challenging because, like, our ears have been opened up, but like if you come into our studio, you're gonna see like so many instruments, right? But then you think about electronic music, and we kind of have nothing compared, right? It's really weird. And so when you hear like electronic music and then we have to play with it, sometimes it's difficult because we simply cannot compete, you know. And I think it's often difficult to find that balance between the two worlds, to find a real synthesis. And actually I think that's where this piece really succeeds, because nothing overshadows another thing, and there's like a physicality to the electronics that's related to us because it is using delay, you know, but it's still altering the sound. And it's really that's for me the most challenging thing, is finding like, where do I fit in this world? Should I mimic because I can't totally, you know, or like what do I have to offer that can supplement it? So
yeah, if I could add it to like sort of where Ian started, at times I do feel like if I'm thinking in sort of my old pianistic way of approaching certain pieces, it just doesn't make any sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but if I imagine, if this piece was electronic, if I were to play this, imagine what my sound comes out like as an electronic piece, then it really clicks. There have been, I think, quite a few pieces then in our repertoire. If I sort of switch the way I hear it, switch the way I approach it, it makes sense. So, so in that way, yes, it really changed the way, at least my own playing towards it. Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Well, thinking about, you know, coming back to Ty's piece, we haven't listened to this yet. We do have a selection kind of queued up, I think, here in a minute, ready to go. Should we listen to it?
Sure.
Do it.
Yeah.
Boom.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice work. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about bringing this piece into the studio, some of the methodology that went into that.
What did we do?
We did it here, I think.
Oh yeah, I think we
Yeah.
tracked it.
in Ridgewood.
Yeah.
Troutman Hall.
Okay. That's nice.
Yeah, you guys recorded it, and then I think you sent it to me, Russell, right?
Yeah,
To
yeah.
apply the effect.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Because we couldn't get the patch to work. I was like, how are we going to do this? And then you did the
Oh,
effect.
wow.
And
That's
we kind of mixed it.
interesting.
And then we did a couple different back and forth, like, getting the levels good.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. So you sent acoustic tracks.
Yeah, you sent like Ableton session, and then I was able to it was fun because I was able to kind of hear it at its naked state, just the eighth notes, and then I was able to kind of dial in the delay. I feel like I didn't have to. I feel like I had it saved, so I didn't have to make too many adjustments. But I was trying some things like, oh, what if it was a little more like this? And then I ended up just saying, no.
Yeah, I was going to ask, could that be a moment of like evolution for the piece?
Evolution or devolution, depending on what I ended up doing. But I was like, no, I'll just keep it. And it was just fun to be able to hear the effect applied to like a studio recording, where you have the isolation of the instruments and just hearing like kind of like the wingspan, the stereo image of it, like being pretty wide and hearing the effect being tossed from left to right. It was cool. It was really fun.
Yeah. I love how direct it sounds. It really, it makes it takes it out of one context for me. It kind of opens it up, and I feel like I'm able to listen to it sort of like outside of genre or something like that, which is really a pleasure.
I liked how
go ahead, Ty.
I was just saying I liked how it was recorded a lot. I think what Russell and everyone did really captured the way I was imagining it being recorded, and really kind of captured the feeling of the piece.
Nice. You're looking at the mic right here.
Oh.
I think we did it. We definitely did it in here. Probably late at night when the guys upstairs were not sawing away.
Yeah.
Did you do it live, or was there overdubs, or?
We tracked it. We each tracked it. Yeah. So like Laura and Ning came in and did it separate, because having the click, it let us do that, and it just made sense.
Yeah.
Plus, those are the only two mics that.
That's right.
Right.
It goes against how you how I've always understood contemporary ensembles record. There always seems to be this like, well, we'll never be able to get this piece recorded because we'll never have the budget to do it right. And I love that you guys are so like you understand how the piece sounds and you know how to get there, and there's nothing precious about it. I think that completely comes through in the quality of the recording. It's really, really satisfying.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. I'm pro studio recordings. Again, it kind of gets to that same thing with the click that you get, like the kind of impossibility of the clarity. It's like so clear, and it's like there's like a magic to it, where when you're able to kind of, and it's live, you could really hear everyone playing. It's like, but it's just like, it's in sync in a way that's like kind of inhuman, and I love that feeling.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, guys, I think we're running out of time. So thanks so much for being here, Ben and Ty. Yeah. It was really awesome to talk to you.
Thank you.
Everyone, our next... Yeah, it's awesome. Our next episode is on Tuesday with Nathan Davis and Du Yun. Remember to subscribe to our channel when you have a chance, and check out our page on patreon.com if you have a moment. It helps us to keep these things going. And thanks, guys, for being here.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.
Tell Du Yun I say hi. She's awesome.
For sure.
We will, absolutely.
For sure. Bye, everybody.
All. See ya.
Thanks.
Hey guys. Thanks.